Spider-Man Web of Shadows is a game that came out for the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and I believe the Nintendo Wii as well. It's a pretty fun game, but how does it compare to the more recent Spider-Man games, most notably the ones put out by Sony? In today's video, I hope to answer that question for you. So that sounds good to you? Let's get right to it.
Spider-Man does whatever a spider can.
Okay, so story-wise, right off the bat, I want to emphasize this is a Venom-focused game. So if you're not that big into Venom and don't really have many thoughts or cares about Venom, probably not going to enjoy this game. So the game begins with Spider-Man in the city of New York, or New York City I should say, in Manhattan, and he's kind of disoriented. It's the middle of a symbiote invasion. So a bunch of different alien life forms are taken over. They're attacking literally any and everything that walks and trying to take over their bodies through symbiosis. Now, in the opening cutscenes, you've got Spider-Man looking for Mary Jane. Some of his allies are around helping out with some of the action and activity, but it really kicks off showing a battle that Spider-Man had with Venom. And Venom, of course, is the symbiote that's overtaken the body of Eddie Brock, who's one of Spider-Man's main antagonists throughout the franchise series. So during that battle with Venom, Venom's symbiote attaches to Spider-Man. And what you see here is Spider-Man's traditional red and blue Spidey suit that we all know starts to fade into more of a black and white suit. It also gives him some enhanced strength, enhanced powers that he wouldn't ordinarily have just on his own wearing the red and blue Spider-Man suit. Now this is where the game gets really interesting, because throughout the progression of the game, you have a choice now of whether you want to play the activities through the lens of the red and blue Spider-Man, which is typically a more wholesome, the traditional Spider-Man that we all know, or you have like an edgier version in the black and white Venom suit symbiote Spider-Man. I like to think of that version of Spider-Man more as like Raphael from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You know, just a lot of edge, a lot of attitude. And what's interesting here is, depending on which suit you play as, it's going to open up various dialogue choices. So if you want to play the straight and narrow, be a good guy, so to say, you stay playing in the red and blue Spider-Man suit, and you have a choice as a dialogue to answer either as the red and blue Spider-Man or the edgier, get off my back sort of black and white Venom symbioted Spider-Man. So throughout the game, the symbiote invasion is progressively getting worse and worse. So after that initial battle you have with Venom in the opening scenes of the game, he sort of disappears, goes AWOL, but he hasn't really left the city. Rather, he's just found a new way to create these pods that he uses to gather strength. He creates more symbiotes that come out of the pods and they attach to other humans. He's basically making like a symbiote army. Now, throughout the action of the game, you as Spider-Man are going to encounter a lot of the traditional villains that Spider-Man encounters in comics or movies. So there's the Kingpin, there's Black Cat, there's Vulture, there's Electro, there's others like that. But then what's interesting is with Venom and the symbiote invasion, he gradually finds a way to corrupt or have the symbiotes overtake the majority of those antagonists that you would have encountered anyway. The one exception is Kingpin. He never really attaches to him, and it's weird because Kingpin in this game sort of is like an anti-hero. Like, he's working with S.H.I.E.L.D. because for his own selfish reasons he figures out, hey, if I help stop this symbiote invasion, I'll be remembered as a good guy. I'll be remembered as a hero. No one's really going to think about my criminal past. So he's got an interesting kind of like dual agent sort of vibe going on. Meanwhile, the agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. kind of distrust Spider-Man because when he's wearing the black and white Venom suit, they're worried that he's under the influence of Venom or the symbiote controlling Venom, and they just don't trust him. Now, you do see some X-Men allies come into play here. Specifically, Wolverine comes into this game. And it's interesting because at one point, Wolverine gets overtaken by a symbiote, and you have to fight a symbiotic version of Wolverine, which is interesting. So honestly, with the game, the storyline, it is heavily Venom focused, but they do try to bring in a lot of different characters in the Spider-Man universe. And honestly, that's where things start to go downhill, because the story just becomes so complex, so convoluted. I honestly had a hard time figuring out what was going on. Like, especially if it's the type of game where, I played this over the course of a few months. So I would play it some, put it down, pick it up, put it down, let a few weeks go by, pick it back up. I really had a hard time following the course of the action and what was going on. And for me, maybe that would have been easier if I was playing it straight through without taking the breaks like I was doing, but I still think it was just overly complicated, and it was overly ambitious, and it didn't really stick the landing with respect to the story, in my opinion.
Spider-Man, Spider-Man, does whatever a spider can.
So in terms of gameplay, if you've played the more recent Spider-Man games that I mentioned previously, the ones by Sony that came out in the last 5 or so years, in terms of gameplay mechanics, this game will feel very familiar to you. There's a lot of swinging around the city, there's a lot of web shooting. Spider-Man still has that battle system, that fighting mechanics, kind of like what Batman, Arkham City, Arkham Asylum introduced several years ago. Spider-Man still has all that going on. Now, is this game as good as those games? No. I mean, if you just have one place where you could start, limited time, you're trying to figure out what to do with Spider-Man or how to get involved in it, I recommend go to the Sony games first. This game is very good, though, if you have some background and familiarity with the Spider-Man franchise, and you're just looking for something a little bit different to play. Now, it's worth noting, too, that as you play this game, there are different control mechanisms depending on which suit you're wearing. So specifically the red and blue Spider-Man suit or the black and white Venom Spidey suit, they've got different mechanics, different moves, different abilities, which sounds cool in principle, but actually in execution of it, it got to be a lot. Because here I am trying to figure out how to do my web shooters as a black-suited Spider-Man when I've been playing primarily as a red and blue Spider-Man, or vice versa. Like, there's different controls, like different moves, but also different controls as well. And it made it really hard to kind of remember two completely different move sets throughout the game. There really was not a lot of overlap between what they were doing. I mean, yeah, web slinging and web shooting to get around the city was more or less the same. But other things like web shooting an enemy and pulling him towards you, or throwing a web at someone, very different depending on which Spidey suit you were wearing. So that to me got to be a little bit tricky to navigate, and at times a little bit frustrating as well. Now specifically, I remember a part of the game towards the end where I'm fighting Vulture, specifically a symbiotic version of Vulture that had been corrupted by Venom. And with all the Vulture battles throughout the game, you actually fight him twice. They're battles that take place in the sky, and if you fall down, your game is pretty much over and you have to restart from the beginning of the battle. So, I played primarily as the black and white Spidey, the edgier Spider-Man, and I just kept forgetting what moveset it was to web towards the villain or the enemy, and then you had to like launch off them to jump further. Now with the red and blue Spider-Man, it was like Y or something like that, just Y to pull in, Y to jump out. As black suited Spider-Man, completely different moveset, I kept forgetting it. And you'd say, why don't I just play as the red and blue Spider-Man for those parts? Well, I would try. The issue was that you could easily switch between suits based on your pressing of the left stick. And for whatever reason, however I was holding the controller or playing, I kept shifting between the two suits, but I couldn't really get into a rhythm where I was playing as just one type of Spider-Man. I was kind of, at least in the air combat. In the air combat, I was constantly switching between red and blue and black and white. It was really annoying. I didn't have that issue when I was on the ground fighting. I mean, sometimes I would switch over, but it was a lot more prevalent when I was in the sky trying to figure out how to battle that way. And for me, it really took a lot of fun away from the game. Like, the symbiotic Vulture battle towards the end of the game, I spent so much time trying to beat it and pass it. I actually rage quitted on that several times. It was really frustrating and honestly sucked a lot of the fun out of the game for me. And then also I mentioned swinging around the city. That was fun at times. It was honestly one of the more fun parts of the game. But a lot of times it also just felt tedious because you would finish one mission and then the other mission that you'd have to get to would be all the way on their side of the map. And to their credit or discredit, however you want to look at it, they tried to make New York City to scale. So if you're starting down in lower Manhattan, having to go all the way up to like where the Bronx area is, you're really spending time webbing to get all the way across the island. And there's no fast travel. There's nothing like that. And, you know, along the way, there might be little side missions or side quests that you could do, like stop a rival gang from attacking someone, or take a hurt citizen to the hospital, or help the police with a, symbiote invasion or whatever. At first, those were kind of interesting, but really they just became tedious too. And it really started to feel like a grind, right? Like it was just stuff you did to gain XP. It wasn't anything that like I wanted to do to have fun. So I didn't really like that part either.
Spider-Man does whatever a spider can.
So in terms of technical aspects, I played this game on the Xbox 360. It is an Xbox 360 disc. I'm not 100% certain if it's backwards compatible with an Xbox One. I didn't try to put it in my Xbox One to see, so I just played it natively off of 360. Now playing it on Xbox 360 ran great. I didn't have any issues with it hanging up on me. Frame rate seemed solid. I don't have tools to measure frame rates, nor do I really care. Just from my experience, it was fine, right? And then no glitching, no issues. It was a pretty smooth overall experience. It was also a very immersive world. I mean, like I said, webbing around New York City, it felt like New York City. I mean, there were very tall buildings, there was crime activity happening, there were alleyways and stuff. The only thing that might have been missing to make it more realistic would be like cars driving in the street and traffic. I don't remember a lot of that. I remember there were cars like parked on the road that you could use to like throw at enemies, but I don't really remember seeing cars driving. Maybe they were there, but I just don't really remember. Anyways, pretty immersive world. I enjoyed it, but like I said, at times it started to feel tedious just having to web all the way from point A to point B, or just stopping to get involved in some of the more mundane day-to-day activities and side quests.
Spider-Man does whatever a spider can.
Now, in terms of replayability, as I mentioned, there's all sorts of side quests going on in this game. There's also these like spiderweb designs or like Spider-Man logos that are throughout the world. And, sometimes they're high up on top of buildings, sometimes they're in alleyways, sometimes just in the middle of the street. Kind of like the hidden packages in Grand Theft Auto, but a whole lot more of them. So between collecting those or completing some of these side missions, you would have received a good amount of XP that you could then use through your progression system to level up moves and abilities either with your red and blue good Spider-Man suit or your black and white bad Spider-Man suit. Aside from that, if you play through the main game, I've read there are 4 different ways this game could end, so 4 different endings. And it really comes down to how you played the game, whether you were red and blue or black and white. And then in addition to that, there's a course of dialogue or sequencing of activities that occurs like the final battles, final cutscenes, that can also kind of take you down a different path. So I, of course, played as the black and white, venomous sort of Spidey. Very edgy. Every time I had a chance to choose a dialogue option as black and white Spider-Man with some attitude, of course I chose it. So my ending, I'm not going to ruin it, giving anyone any spoilers or what have you. It was fine, but do I see myself going back and playing it again to see the other 3 endings? No. So in terms of replayability, like I mentioned, a lot of side quests and activities, but it felt very mundane, very fast. And I honestly have no interest in going back and playing the game repeat times to try to see the other endings. I mean, that's why they have YouTubers out there. That's why there are people that have already done it. You can just go and watch the different endings if you want. Save yourself a whole lot of time. Nobody got time for that.
Spider-Man does whatever a spider can.
So my final thoughts. I truly did enjoy my experience playing Spider-Man Web of Shadows. I had a fun time with it. I enjoyed how they tried to tie in all the different facets of the Spider-Man universe, and how they introduced all the various characters that Spider-Man more or less would have interacted with during the comic book series. I appreciated what they tried to do there, but I think it was a little too ambitious and it didn't really stick the landing. In addition, I thought that some of the side quests became very mundane very fast, and it was kind of annoying having to web swing, these colossal distances across the map with no fast travel. On top of that, the whole switching between movesets with red and blue Spidey versus black and white Spidey, it's cool, I applaud it, but again, the execution of it didn't really work the best for me, especially with the sky battles. Like, I really struggled with a lot of the fights that you had in the sky and trying to move in the sky, fight in the sky, not fall down, not reset all my progress. So for those reasons, I'm going to rate Spider-Man Web of Shadows a 7 out of 10. It's a good game. It's an enjoyable game. Don't get me wrong. I enjoyed playing it. But I don't recommend it to you unless you're looking to go a little bit deeper in the Spider-Man franchise, or you're looking to experience a different take on Spider-Man. If you're completely new to Spider-Man or looking to get involved in the Spider-Man game somehow with your limited time, I would direct you over to Sony's latest releases, either Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2, or the Spider-Man Miles Morales games. Those are outstanding. Those are well worth your time and your hard-earned dollars. If you're, limited on time or limited on dollars, let's be honest, who isn't limited on dollars, right? This game is one that you can probably put on the back burner. You don't have to put it front and center on your backlog, but, take that for what it's worth, right? I had fun with it, but it wasn't the greatest game. It had some issues that bogged it down that, for me at least in my experience, it really brought down my experience. So with that, those are my thoughts on Spider-Man Web of Shadows. Have you played this game? What do you think about it? I appreciate you checking out this video and my other videos. If you haven't done so already and you like this content, please consider hitting that subscribe button. That really helps me out. And as always, thanks so much for watching. Catch you next time.